Hi, my name is Evelyn Mahoney, and this is my project, Monitoring and Assessment of Project Prosperity with PACH and FIBUSPAM. So, what is Project Prosperity? Project Prosperity is a program led primarily by Mimi Lucero and Stephanie Guacho that helps adolescent mothers ages 10 to 16. It has helped 36 mothers over the course of two cohorts. Each cohort had workshops, which took place at FIBUSPAM over the course of 4 Saturdays. And at these workshops, participants were given education on computer and business skills, and a computer was provided to all mothers. Importantly, outside of these workshops, participants' lives varied greatly, depending on the level of familial support they received. Some participants had strong familial support and were allowed to continue living in more childlike roles despite their unplanned pregnancies, where other participants suffered from the stigma of unplanned pregnancies or merely came from families with few resources, so they had to not only care for themselves, but also younger siblings and their babies and other family members. Nearly all of the participants want to stay in school, and many participants have continued their studies. However, for a few participants, this is logistically impossible due to other obligations, such as working or caring for their babies. So, why now? Why conduct this assessment now? 6.35% of females ages 15 to 19 are mothers in Ecuador. This is higher than the Latin American average. That means that it's very important to conduct this assessment because this large population of Ecuadorian mothers means that it's critical to determine how to best support mothers so that resources can be allocated in the most beneficial and efficient manner possible. Another reason to conduct this assessment now is because past survey data gave very little constructive feedback. There's a culture expectation that exists among many Andean indigenous women that women should be always very grateful and positive, and women are taught many times to avoid complaining. This could mean that the past completely positive feedback that we received about the program may have been due to women not feeling completely comfortable and that leading to them not being honest about the ways that the program could help them in its fullest capacity. Thus, it was important to redesign the interview process to ensure that the value of feedback was stressed and to gain more constructive feedback from the program. Finally, there's very little current research in scholarly conversation assessing the strengths of Latin American adolescent mothers programs. Indeed, while many adolescent programs I'm sorry. Indeed, while many adolescent programs and for adolescent mothers in Latin America exist, there's a wide diversity of the type of support offered by different programs. So it's really critical to assess which types of supports have helped mothers most. And so for us in our own program, it's critical to determine which parts of our program worked the best so that these parts can be invested in further. So what was my role in this? Quality improvement and assessment. In other words, I was looking for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats to the program to ensure that future cohorts benefit participants to the greatest extent possible. I did this primarily by contacting and interviewing participants, as well as interpreting, transcribing, and organizing interviews. So the assessment tool we used was an interview outline, which was primarily developed by Mimi Lucero of PACH. This emphasized hypotheticals and the value of feedback in order to overcome Andean indigenous expectation for women to remain always grateful and positive and not point out criticisms. For example, many of the women claimed that they had not heard of any women having any issues with the programs whatsoever. In these situations, we gave them a hypothetical situation where a woman wasn't able to come to a program, and we asked them why this might have occurred. Through this exercise, we learned much more about the barriers that women had faced in coming to the program and the needs that the program wasn't meeting. However, this information wouldn't have come up if we had just asked them if there were any issues, as many women were hesitant to give issues. Finally, there was an emphasis on the interview as a conversation with follow-up questions because we wanted the women to feel cared for, heard, and safe, not merely as just data points. Another advantage to this was that we could get more in-depth insights into the program from mothers as opposed to merely multiple choice type answers. Who was interviewed or surveyed? 23 of the 36 former participants had WhatsApp contacts, so 23 were contacted. Of those 23, 9 accepted interviews. An important note about contacting the participants is that there was a lack of digital record for many of these participants. And so while I was contacting the participants, many of the profile pictures on the WhatsApp seemed to be of people who weren't the past mothers. For example, many of the profile pictures were men or elderly women. This could have been an issue of the mothers not having their own telephone to use WhatsApp, sorry, their own cell phone to use WhatsApp, or it could have been due to errors in the documentation process of contacts themselves, in which case these were actually wrong numbers. So going forward, I think that it's really important that we keep a digital copy of this so errors due to things such as handwriting or issues with scanning processes don't lead to this lack of contacts. Moving on to ethical and participatory considerations. All interviews were done on a voluntary basis, meaning participants could opt in or opt out of interviews, and the choice was theirs to continue the interview as long as they wanted. Information is being kept anonymous and confidential, including the quotes in this presentation, to protect privacy. Participant consent was gained before each interview to ensure that they were okay with it being recorded. And finally, all participants who came in person to be interviewed were given free medical treatment. This was so we didn't find out about any medical issues and then not offer any form of help medically for these people. Program strengths. Overall, the women were very grateful and had really positive feedback for the program. As one woman stated, todas las capacitaciones que nos han enseñado ha sido súper claritas en los, aparte de que nos dan capacitaciones. In other words, the teaching was very clear and helpful. This is a strength of the program because many of the women expressed that they'd learned a lot. Another strength was the kind, patient, helpful staff who gave a lot of advice to participants. As one stated, toda era muy linda, era amable, tenía paciencia para explicarnos, nos daba consejos. This is a strength because, oh, sorry. This is a strength because the participants were made to feel helped and they felt like they learned a lot. But another strength was the psychologist and the marketing classes overall. As one stated, sobre marketing y también cuando nos ayudaron con unos psicólogos y me ha ayudado mucho. Despite these strengths, there were a couple emerging needs from participants that came through. Although most participants again stated that they didn't have any issues nor knew anyone with any issues, a few had suggestions for improvement, and the hypothetical of why a woman might miss a class was very helpful in illuminating many unmet needs. As one participant stated for her recommendation for the program, más clases y más tipos de clases, dinámico por ahí, tal vez algo más participativo. So, in other words, more diverse courses and more participation, because the program as it is currently mostly focused on lectures that were computer based and based on how to learn on the computer, but there are many other Latin American adolescent mothers programs that use different types of courses, and I think it's important that to note that some of the women feel that they need education on things beyond just how to use a computer, and how to conduct a business. For example, things such as childcare classes could be offered in the future. Another participant stated, no estar tan informada de cómo de dónde proviene la ropa. This is an important quote because many of the women wanted to start a business, especially in selling clothes, and many women had plans for how to acquire fabric and how to make the clothes. But this particular participant wanted to resell clothes, and she didn't know where to get the clothes. But one important opportunity about this is that a different participant did have a clear plan and knew where to find the clothes. So in many cases, the participants themselves may be able to help each other come up with more steps for creating their business and the logistics of operating in the greater Riobamba area. Finally, an emerging need from a participant is that many participants needed economic and financial help. As one stated, la falta de dinero, también de la situación económica que estamos pasando. Many participants stated that this was a barrier to starting their program because they didn't have the seed money required to start, or they just simply couldn't find clients because of the economic situation Ecuador is currently in. Barriers and operational challenges. When asked why a woman might not come on a particular Saturday, nearly every participant cited a lack of childcare. As one stated, ajá, también fuera súper mejor, ya que mientras nosotros, como digamos, nos preparamos, podrían ahí, digamos, a los bebés podrían entrenarse, podrían estar y con eso están a nuestro lado mismo. This is one example of a participant stating that the program would be much better if the children themselves could come and didn't have to be cared for by someone at home or didn't have to sit next to the mothers during the courses themselves. Another barrier that was brought up by one participant was over the fact that much of the communication for this program occurred over WhatsApp, and many prospective participants may not have WhatsApp or access to the internet. As she states, hay personas que o chicas que no tienen la posibilidad de tener un teléfono. Moving on to the SWOT analysis. So, first, some strengths. Overall, participants feel that this program has really helped them move forward. As one said, estoy siguiendo adelante. This program helps women move forward in many ways. The computer has helped women develop web pages and social media accounts, and it's helped some women even continue their studies. 100% of the women have interest in starting a business, and nearly all had a clear idea of what type of business this would be. The teaching of the program was very clear, as aforementioned, and many found that the digital marketing practices helped them a lot. One even said that she used this to make a logo for her mother's business. A weakness of this program mainly is the lack of childcare. As one stated, in some cases, the lack of childcare actually did stop participants from joining. As she said, a veces las chicas no tenían a quien dar a sus bebés, es por ese motivo que no podían venir. In other words, the women couldn't come because there was nowhere for their children to be. A few other weaknesses that were found in this assessment include a lack of a digital record and the WhatsApp communication that may not have been accessible for all of the women. However, when participants face barriers or challenges in this program, the strong community of other participants helped to support the struggling mother. As one put really beautifully, lo que nosotros aprendimos ahí es el compañerismo. The women expressed many examples of how they helped one another. If one couldn't make it because of a lack of transportation, the WhatsApp group would rally together to catch up the woman on whatever she'd missed from that Saturday. If one woman had nowhere to leave her baby, the group would take turns taking care of the baby during the session. My favorite example was, as one put it, if one woman had a cookie, they would share it between all of them. And that was just how it was. This is an opportunity because this suggests that past participants could have a more active role in future cohorts. They've already been helping each other, and in some cases, even teaching some of the content as they helped each other catch up. So, in the future, past participants could serve in more leadership roles, possibly, allowing the community members themselves to run the program more sustainably. One threat to the program is economic challenges, as many women had difficulty finding clientele and they lacked money to start their business. Another threat is the lack of public transportation, which posed a problem because many women live quite far from FIBUSPAM, commuting as much as 2.5 hours to get to the program. And from rural areas, there usually are not buses, or as the women said, the buses could be prohibitively expensive. So, some critical recommendations that I have are to ensure that childcare is provided for all future cohorts. I think that it's also really important to keep a digital record of the contact information. One thing that I would suggest would be having a Google Sheet that's shared with all the women to have them enter their own contact information. I think that this would be a really good opportunity to give them some experience with using a tool that could be really helpful for organizing their businesses in the future. And also, it would be helpful because it would ensure that we have all the right contact information for them and aren't relying on papers that have handwritten things. Another possible solution for the issues brought up by this assessment would be to have more past participant participation in future cohorts and to have the cohorts themselves take place ideally within the community as opposed to at FIBUSPAM so that people don't have to struggle to get, 2.5 hours away from them to get to the program. So this is how I see it working. Step one would be to interview past participants to see if they're interested in working for the program. Many past participants seem to express interest in this, and we're interested in how the program could help women in the future. So based on their feedback, I think it seems likely that some of the participants would want to give back and help future participants. But also, another way to incentivize these participants would be to grant seed money to the best candidates, candidates with clear business plans who could really help the program. I think that there are good candidates for this among the past participants. In fact, one participant seemed really active in her community and was even asking about bringing a caravana there. So, women such as these, who are leaders in their community and past participants, could be really helpful to future cohorts. And earning seed money for candidates could really help them get their business running, as this is a main thing that people have lacked, and was an original goal of the program in stage 4 to grant seed money so that people who had the best business ideas and the most clear plans could really get the support they need to start. Next, I think it would be important for FIBUSPAM to use its community connections to contact local community members and secure a place where participants could meet regularly and hold cohorts with their prospective communities. Then I think it would be important for FIBUSPAM staff to take a caravana to the communities and to help past participant leaders to survey future participants about what types of courses they would want and need. As I mentioned, past participants have stated that they want more diverse types of coursework. So gaining some preliminary feedback on what types of courses would be most beneficial for each community member could be very valuable. During this caravana, I also think it would be important to begin training leaders, as well as to distribute some supplies that they might need, such as computers for the future participants. Ideally, though, going forward, these leaders would largely lead their cohorts on their own, but there would be regular virtual meetings with these leaders. The leaders already have computers for this because they're past participants, and I think that it would be important that Patch ensures a little bit of internet, at least for these few leaders in the communities, so that they can stay connected with FIBUSPAM and Patch teams. Finally, the leaders would lead regular workshops and hold spaces not only to teach participants new concepts, but also just to serve as community spaces and support for these participants who might not have this kind of support from their family members. Notably, this proposal of having past participants help future participants would also help the past participants themselves, because recent research has found that this teaching and leadership experience could help adolescent leaders become more confident and gain many soft skills that would be important for running their business. It would also just empower them to know that they're becoming leaders in their communities. Another recommended solution I have is in regards to sales, because many of the Ecuadorian past participants have claimed that it's really difficult in Ecuador's economy to find clients. So I think that international sales could be a really good option. One way to do this would be to apply to an existing website such as Amazon Handmade or Novica. Both of these websites aim to help women or aim to help people in general who are creating goods by hand. And in the case of Novica, they would also facilitate international shipping, which could sometimes be an issue from Ecuador. However, these companies do require an application for artisans, and they do take a percentage of profits from the artisans. So while they might be a little bit easier, there are drawbacks in this case. So an alternative would be Patch creating its own website to conduct sales from. One opportunity in this domain is that Patch has a lot of staff members who go back and forth between Ecuador and the US. So these staff members could take goods with them between Ecuador and the US and avoid the international difficulties of shipping. Finally, a third option, though it doesn't necessarily help with the economic state of Ecuador in general, would be to find local bazaars where these women could sell their things. A lot of women stated that the lack of physical spaces made it really difficult to find clients. So Helping them to find the bazaars in their own communities might help with this. In conclusion, participants were very grateful for the program, and reviews were very, very positive still. Many have taken steps to start their business, but the economy and a lack of seed money has made this pretty difficult. In other cases, issues such as continuing studying, obligations at home, or the necessity to work have stopped women from making considerable progress in their business. In regards to the program itself, the lack of childcare and transportation due to the distance of FIBUSPAM are also barriers to participation. However, community-based programs and international sales are possible solutions to help combat this. That's all I have for today. Thank you so much.